Hey there, I'm Mari, and first I want to thank all of you for subscribing and helping us hit the 10,000 subscriber milestone. I'm so glad that so many of you stopped by after seeing Mr. Beast's video and helped us grow from the 4 subscribers I started with. To celebrate, I'm going to tell you the story of MatPat and the Great Mining Tragedy. But first, if you haven't already, take a second to tap the subscribe button and hit that bell because I've got a lot more great stories for you. Now, MatPat is known for his popularity as a YouTuber and creator and narrator of game theory, film theory, and food theory. He started one of the first live gaming YouTube channels in 2015. His game theory episodes cover a number of popular games, including Minecraft. But what you may not know is how a real mining tragedy affected MatPat's family. MatPat's great-grandfather, Peter Gita, was born on November 1st, 1891, in a part of Russia that later became Poland. Peter immigrated to the United States on May 30th, 1911, when he was about 19 years old. Peter set sail from Liverpool, England, aboard the SS Caronia. Interestingly, nearly a year later, this was the first ship to relay the first warning of bergs, growlers, and field ice to the Titanic just over 2.5 hours before she hit the iceberg, resulting in the deaths of over 1,500 people. Peter survived his sea voyage just fine and landed in New York City. He moved from New York to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he married MatPat's great-grandmother, Josephine Tobias, on August 28, 1922. Josephine was a recent immigrant herself. She was born Józefa Tobias in Poland on June 18, 1899. She came across the Atlantic Ocean to the United States from Danzig, Poland in February 1920 on the SS Estonia and landed in Boston, Massachusetts. She was 22 years old and traveled alone to meet her father, who lived in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Josephine gave birth to a honeymoon baby on May 20th, 1923, and named her Helen. Josephine and Peter became the parents of 3 more children. Their youngest child, MatPat's grandmother, was born in 1932. One pretty cool thing about Peter is that he really wanted to become a United States citizen. The process wasn't easy and it was very time-consuming. In the early 1900s, the first step of becoming a U.S. citizen was to file a declaration of intention. Basically, Peter had to give an oath that he intended to become a United States citizen and that he would renounce his allegiance to all other nations. Peter filed his declaration of intention in 1925. At the time, he was working as a miner. He described himself as 5 feet 7 inches with a ruddy complexion, black hair, and blue eyes. He also had a small scar on his lower forehead. He gave his address, which was 135 Merrifield Avenue in Scranton, Pennsylvania. The next step towards citizenship was petitioning for citizenship. This had to be done within 7 years of filing the Declaration of Intention. Peter filed his petition on December 3rd, 1930, and 2 of his miner buddies provided their witness that they had known Peter for nearly 10 years and that he was of good moral character and qualified to be admitted as a citizen of the United States. The last step of the naturalization process was a hearing before a judge who would make sure everything looked good and all was in order, and if it was, the applicant would take an oath of allegiance to the United States Constitution and renounce all foreign allegiances and be given a certificate of citizenship. Peter took his oath of allegiance on February 10th, 1932. It took Peter 7 years to finally become a citizen of the United States. Peter's celebration was cut short when a little more than a month later he was killed. On March 31st, 1932, an article from the local newspaper ran the headline, "Peter Gita, Killed While at Work in Baker Mine." The article read, Peter Gita, 45, of 332 First Avenue, a miner in the Baker Colliery of the Glen Alden Coal Company, was instantly killed by a fall of roof while at work last night. The body was recovered after much difficulty and taken to the family home by funeral director Frank Bonin. The article inaccurately states that he was survived by his 3 daughters, Helen, Josephine, and Bronislaw. This isn't right. He had a daughter named Helen and 2 sons, Joseph and Bernard. Newspapers weren't always exactly accurate, especially when hurrying to get out a story that may have happened just hours before. The year Peter was killed, the Baker mine employed 1,352 people. Mining was an extremely dangerous occupation in the 1800s and early 1900s. Mining accidents were so common that the U.S. Department of the Interior put out a coal mine accident report each year, including the year Peter was killed. And it's crazy, but they based their fatality rate on the number of people killed per million tons of coal mined. In 1932, the Pennsylvania death rate was 4.99 deaths per million tons in anthracite mines, which was actually the best fatality rate the anthracite industry had ever experienced. However, when you take into account the fact that Pennsylvania produced nearly 50 million tons of anthracite coal in 1932, that means nearly 250 men died just in Pennsylvania that year. And that's still a lot of deaths. It's just really tragic that Peter had to be among those fatalities. And deaths from a fall of the roof wasn't all that uncommon. In 1932, 160 other men in mines across the country also died from the same cause. Roof falls were the leading cause of fatalities and injuries in coal mines. In 1932, about 52% of all fatal accidents and 26% of all non-fatal injuries were due to falls of roof. So now Josephine was left alone to raise her 3 small children. Helen was about 10, Joseph was 5, and Bernard was 3. And not only that, but Josephine was pregnant with her 4th child, Marianne, who was born 8 months after her father died. Tragically, Peter may not have even known he was going to be a father again. Josephine was a supermom, though, and she worked as a kitchen worker, dishwasher, and housekeeper to provide for her young family. She had a strong work ethic and saw that her children were educated. This tradition has been passed down through the generations and undoubtedly helped form the family culture that MatPat grew up in and helped him become the successful person he is today. Thanks for joining me for this story, and make sure you leave a comment to let me know whose stories you want to hear next.